Final Fantasy IV. It's July 1991. You've just finished playing Final Fantasy III and are beyond excited for the next installment in your favorite turn-based series. Maybe this next one will have a comprehensive job system like 3, or star a horrifying story of war and complex mechanics like 2, or... Oh, forgive me, sorry, this is my Japan-centric copy. I need to find my North America. It's not in there. One second. US? No. North America. It has to be here. Okay, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Found it. Here we go. It's November 1991, and you've just finished playing Final Fantasy I. You've heard rumors of 2 being just on the horizon. You may have even seen some art, or the box. But this isn't it. It doesn't feel right. I mean, it says Final Fantasy II, and that's what it's being sold as, marketed, would proceed to hold that title for well over a decade, until the formal re-releases were created for the Nintendo DS, after the Square and Enix merger. But hey, what do I know? I wasn't actually there to experience all this firsthand. Maybe that's why I don't fully understand the old heads who fought on the front lines of pronunciation discourse, or sat in the dank trenches of video game-centric chat rooms and forums that still call Final Fantasy IV FF2. Like, is it a joke? Is it to prove you were there, man?
I was there, man!
I don't know. Go on, live your best life. Keep commenting on my videos. That's been great. But I would like to draw your attention to the fact that 2 and 3 have been available on the North American market for longer than 4 and 6 ever had those names publicly. Just a reminder. Sorry. Sidecam Clover's been feeling a little underutilized, so I figured we'd give her an outlet. Call shit whatever you want. She does. I'm just a lot more contrarian at that angle. All that being said, I do genuinely hope beyond all hope that you're just as excited as I am to truly delve into what many consider to be the first actualized Final Fantasy title.
Warning. This video will explicitly explore and spoil 100% of Final Fantasy IV's plot, with some obscure connections drawn to other games we've previously covered on the channel. If you'd like to play the game before watching this plot summation, please do. Both the game and video will be here for however long it takes you to get around to them.
But if I were you, I'd add this video to your watch later playlist so you don't forget. Now, before you look at the timestamp and think I'm leaving 4 out to dry, I must inform you, we've now entered the video series within a video series era. From now on, expect no less than 2 videos per game. Probably. I don't know. I haven't played them all yet. Maybe I won't have that much to say about Final Fantasy XI. Only time will tell. Lots and lots of time. The first Final Fantasy title to be released for the Super Family Computer... US-centric script. The first Final Fantasy title to be released for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, Final Fantasy IV was well received. People loved it. And I mean loved it. The intricacies of its system, the dramatic telling of its story, its charming characters, and complex combat continued to do what its predecessors started, setting new standards for RPGs at the time. Selling 200,000 copies in Japan on day of release, Final Fantasy IV was yet another W under the struggling company's belt. The studio's initial plan was to release this game under the title Final Fantasy V for the Super Famicom, nearly in tandem with a Final Fantasy IV for the no-better-than-average Famicom. This idea eventually got scrapped, which is probably for the best considering how proactive video game companies have always had to be with their project budgeting. With a substantial amount of work already having been done on this project, being cited as almost 80% complete by the time it was binned, many of its assets were reutilized in the now renamed Final Fantasy IV for the Super Famicom. See again, budgeting, so I'm glad they got the use out of those assets. Unlike last time, the naming convention is far more confusing than the story itself. Although the story itself had gone through several slimming procedures, as what was originally written was far too expansive for the small cartridges at the time. Having taken major chunks out of the original script has led to the extrapolation that later additions like the Lunar Ruins, character moments, plot beats, and side quests included in the re-releases and re-renditions of the game could have arisen due to the lack of time and space to develop them in full for the original. So, what makes this game such a drama-fueled success? Well, let's turn our attention to the real focus of this video. The plot breakdown. And before you ask, yes, I did play the Pixel Remaster for this video. You can tell by taking a look at any of the clips that I'm about to show you. Except for the ones that are clearly 3D, I may or may not have misplaced some of my original gameplay footage and had to utilize a later playthrough. But that does mean that I did play some of the 3D version for sake of comparison. I don't know what to tell you, I do have a problem. But this will probably be the last time that I do this for the remaining Final Fantasy entries. Don't at me to play the originals. That won't be happening. At least not while I still have a fertile content crop. Arise, and do some war crimes. As one of our main characters carries out the mowing down of innocents to obtain a crystal under the orders of the King of Baron, aka his boss and kind of his dad, as captain of the crowning gem of Baron's standing army, in order of airships called the Red Wings, and also his adopted son. Introducing our main lad in question, Cecil Harvey, the Dark Knight. At 20, this mildly adult protagonist has already gained control of the most powerful military in the land. I'm sure their king is in perfect health and isn't making any strange or rushed decisions. Upon returning to the castle, Cecil, in his infinite brash, youthful wisdom, questions the king on their last mission, for which he is stripped of his title, but is immediately given a chance to redeem himself. This mission introduces the innocuous drop-off of a gift to the mage village of Mist. The easy, simple, non-violent exchange of a bomb ring. Wait, or is it the suspicious ring? The package? The carnelian signet. Realistically, it depends on what version you played. But I am assuming it was changed so that idiot American children could understand the foreshadowing that our military captain doesn't. After milling about the castle, we're introduced to a few more party members in the making. Cecil's best friend and the leader of the Dragoons, Kane Highwind. Cecil's sage advice giver, the short-tempered and to-the-point grizzled head engineer, Cid Polendina, and his love interest. Or, more realistically, love disinterest, Rosa Joanne Farrell, who, after being brushed off by our sleepy little guy, admits that everything she has ever done is in service of him, and to maintain his safety. Their whole relationship is very messy, and honestly my least favorite part of the entirety of the game. But we'll get there. Including to how I think the 3D version of this game has completely changed my opinion on their role within the story. For both better and worse. After a good night's sleep, inviting his bestie to come along and snubbing Rosa, the duo hits the road and travel via Mist Cave, confronting a mist dragon and heading right into the town square, carrying the ring that proceeds to detonate at the king's word. The only survivor is a green in more ways than one little girl, who tells Cecil in his outraged and confused state that the killing of the mist dragon killed her mother. If you die as an Eidolon, you die in real life, or something. Directly seeing the results of his heinous actions, and correctly assuming this was an act of war meant to clear Mist of all summoning magic, Kane takes the king's side and attempts to kill the girl? Psych? He was only testing Cecil. I don't know, Kane, that's a step too far, and like a weird way to vibe check the room. But he's at least more worried about Rosa than Cecil, who I'm sure didn't spare her an extra thought. They attempt to take the girl with them, but in a stunning display of courage and ability, she fights us off, already summoning Titan. Oh, okay. She's another party member, I get it. I see what you're putting down. I like it. Keep doing you, Final Fantasy. Titan quakes some earth and leaves the three on one side of a destroyed mountain pass. Oh, nope, just the two, as Kane is nowhere to be found. Testing their luck against the desert, we finally get to our third locale. This one we don't plan on exploding. Kaipo, the oasis of the desert, leads you to a heartfelt request from the Dark Knight, summarily rebut by the girl's silence, and a run-in with Baron's general, who demands her life. Cecil stands in the way of their blades, single-handedly beating 3 soldiers and scaring off the general. Maybe I misjudged him when I said 20 was too young to be a military leader. He's got that, strong force of will or whatever. While this isn't our first encounter with enemies throughout the game, this one is as good as any other to demonstrate what really separates Final Fantasy IV's combat from all of its predecessors. Say it with me now. ATB, or Active Time Battle. Let's take a look at this little eye-catching bar over yonder. This is your player character's action bar. It is constantly filling, and when it is done, your character gets an action. Every character has their own action bar, as does every enemy. Each of these bars is impacted by your speed, to some extent. The only thing about the enemy's bars is you aren't allowed to see them. Pretty simple. The Pixel Remaster has a toggleable choice to make the combatants wait if you're in a character menu or to not. If you're a masochist, I guess. The combat feels smoother to some extent, allowing for more continuous play, as well as a little bit of pressure added to the player. It also helps to encourage other playstyles, such as the use of status effects, like slow, to help hinder the unknowable and seemingly unstoppable attack speeds of some enemies, or haste on your own team in order to match, or rather destroy, their freak. I generally like the ATB system, although it can cause quite a hindrance to streaming, as occasionally I would forget this swap out in combat styles and proceed to take a whooping while looking at chat. Personal gripe is personal. Then again, if you didn't want my thoughts on the game, you probably shouldn't have clicked on this video. Cecil, in defeating his previous bunkmates for this little girl, gains her trust. She reveals her name is Rydia, and is no longer opposed to following the closest person she has to family into battle. Also, this lady brings up Rose, which we've seen a few times at this point. The only unfortunate thing is that the Rose setup is stationary, meaning there are 2 setups for Rose regardless of party composition. This normally works fine. I think my real question simply remains is, why? I've played through the whole game, and I don't think there's a single area where you need 4 frontliners or vice versa, but just why? Upon entering a random person's home, you learn a girl was found out in the desert, appearing to have succumbed to strong hallucinations and desert fever, resulting in her continuously calling out Cecil's name. Okay, class. Now, what woman have we been introduced to, by name, twice now, whose wants, needs, and dreams are tied solely to Cecil? You guessed it, it's Rosa! In order to get a lock on a third-party member, we're tasked with getting the only cure to desert fever, a sand ruby. Which I'm sure would be a touch too dry for our rock-hungry friend in one, but will make the perfect elixir to bring Rosa back to herself. Traveling through the underground waterway to bring back our alchemical components, we meet Tellah, who Cecil immediately recognizes as his name and crazed actions precede him. The wizened old man immediately asks for our assistance, and since he is blocking our path, we lend him an ear. He needs to get to Damsian. I do 100% believe Tellah mispronounces the town's name, for emphasis. To rescue his daughter Anna, who he believes has been led astray by an evil bard. Which is the funniest thing to be an evil version of, by the way, let's be real. What, do his sharp-witted limericks hurt thine ears? Does he mispronounce words or play at half speed to induce confusion? Perhaps he even touts an evil mustache, curly, that he can twirl at inopportune moments. At long last, with the promise of aid, we finally have a 3-person party. And someone with enough real-world experience to point out another new feature. In-dungeon save spots, that unlike in 3, are not a Pixel Remaster exclusive. A blessing and a resource drain if you aren't too careful and caught up in a grind cycle, little magnetic fields can be found in dungeon rooms that allow your party to camp within the confines of combat. I think it's a cute touch. And I never really had an issue with any of the world-building problems it brings about. In this instance, it makes a lot of sense. A well-traveled underpass complete with bridges and chests may very well have a safety precaution or a camping area for travelers going to or from Kaipo. This is in direct comparison to later enemy-controlled territories. Like, why does this enemy zone have a safe little rest area for us? I don't care. I usually prefer, when I die, not resetting my progress all the way to the beginning of a dungeon, but rather waking up in an enemy's break room. Plus, this is a huge improvement after the catastrophe that was the Crystal Tower at the end of 3. Wrapping up our night inside the cave systems, we head to another mountain pass to find a waterfall that houses the Octomammoth that we must battle, who's apparently quite magic resistant, making our newest addition, the Sage Tellah, a bona fide healer, while Rydia's Chocobo summon sees as much use as it will probably get for the majority of the game.
while Cecil actually puts in work.
Unlike with the first 2 games of the series, you can truly feel the resistances and enemies with a vengeance. This does mean that some fights can feel insurmountable until you've played a little bit more and understand the boss's script or learned their weaknesses. And since the party changes but jobs don't, occasionally characters can feel completely wasteful on their 5, give or take, membered squad.
After making some calamari, dining and dashing sees you to the freshly annihilated Damsian castle. Turns out Baron is still a step ahead on their, at this point, unrelated hunt for the world's crystal cache. Tellah finds his daughter dead, and attacks the very much alive and very spoony Edward Chris von Muir, who he immediately jumps until distracted by his daughter's final words. She informs him that the love of her life and his current foe is the Prince of Damsian. Or I guess was. As is a common term for royalty in Final Fantasy games, he's now more of a keeper of rubble after all of his friends and family died to save him.
And we find out the Red Wings have a new commander. Golbez. Who's that? Unknown.
Having just forgiven his son-in-law, Tellah cries vengeance on this new villainous foe and valiantly trudges on ahead to face him, leaving us to pick up Edward's pieces to bring us back up to a 3-person party, and I guess give him something other than his destroyed home to worry about. He gives us a hovercraft so we can reach the ruby we need to fix up our white mage. Onwards and upwards, or rather downwards, to the Antlion Cave to face off against this gross little guy, obtain what we came here for, and we, the characters, discuss the change in beast behavior as of late. Weird. With Rosa just barely out of bed rest, we take her with us on our journey. A night spent at the inn has Edward confronted by a hangin and the ghost of his beloved newlywed bride. He resolves to try his best. Rydia overcomes her very recent, very real fire-related trauma to melt a block of ice in the team's way. The funniest part about this is when you get into the leveling weeds. As Rydia progresses in her magic skill tree, she can unlock every branch of the fire spell list except fire, the first in the evolution, because of its story ties to the scene. I've since canonized this, as the power it takes to do a controlled burn is much harder to master than a blazing inferno. Really, it's just a fun reminder that this is a story enhanced by individual plot beats, and its mechanics are inherently tied to the story it wants to tell. It is at the mountain's peak that you meet Yang. Who's Yang? Well, another potential party member, silly, and we aren't even done introducing them. This braid-bearing shirtless beast of a man slams enemies down before we can even shout out our own names or offer to help. But we do help him defuse a bomb on the prince's suggestion.
So, I have some notes on the idea of a player surrogate, and this tangent couldn't wait until video the second. The idea of the audience surrogate can be found in just about every form of media, going back for as long as people have been telling stories.
Unfortunately.
This is a character, usually a protagonist or someone close to the main cast, who can act as either a completely blank slate for the player to cast their own thoughts and desires onto, or someone a bit out of the loop who asks a lot of questions to provide a point of entry for the viewer to get a better understanding of the world. Usually, they are a mix of both. This is an incredibly common standard in game writing, and it's not hard to see why, as it both allows the player to better connect with the characters they control, as well as providing the developers an easy way to exposit new things about the world as the characters come across them in-game. Some games within the franchise start to drift away from this idea, but in this installment it's very hard for me to see where the audience ends and Cecil begins. I don't want to get too into the characters right now, that's video 2 stuff. But in this moment, Cecil, our experienced war veteran and the leader of this band of vigilantes, for lack of a better phrase, is not the one who identifies the bomb, but rather the prince who's proven himself to be softer than room temperature butter, is apparently experienced enough to be able to point out that this bomb has something a little extra spicy to it. I think this is one of the moments where the holdover effect of allowing the Warriors of Light in 1, Furion in 2, and Lunith in 3 to all be relatively blank slates that the player can see the world through really starts to wear on the story, as it's not all making blanket good decisions and listening to the advice of your friends. None of those characters had deep, interesting, or conflicting inner lives and motivations. Unlike Cecil, here's a man who does not understand himself, who has done bad things, but is trying to grow, if hindered by circumstance, beyond the identities that he has bound himself to. These are some pretty easy ideas to identify with within a character, whereas being the knowledgeable and cunning leader of a war band isn't exactly as much of a one-for-one. So there are a lot of awkward moments like this, where moments of clarity, knowledge, and leadership fall to much less likely members of the team in order to allow the player to more honestly identify with Cecil as a protagonist. Either that, or they just use the same bombs to kill Edward's entire family in Damsian. Could also make sense. Okay, now hold on to that idea for the next couple of months, as I do plan on expanding on all of the characters in the next video in this series. So we've helped our mystery monk battle a bomb. Oh, and remember what I said about pacing about a video back? The pacing in this entry is pretty solid. We've explored, we've backtracked, we've hit a couple of dungeons, and met almost all of the characters involved in Act 1. We've even already heard the big bad's name and what his role is in the New World Order so far. Young reveals that there is also a crystal in his home kingdom of Fabul, and it must be this mysterious man's next target. So with a new friend and a worsening problem, we follow him home in order to meet his wife, conference with the king, and go to prepare their men for the upcoming war. Leaving our healer and magic dealer to do what? Cook a homecoming feast? Look, they very easily could have done the whole, we need to leave some of our best fighters with the retreating citizenry, or, I don't know, Rosa, you're just fresh off bed rest, you can't constantly be retreating. But no! They don't say that, and don't worry, part 2 will have at least one tangent on how this story treats women, and how it's not the same in all iterations of the game. A face-off against some pretty easy enemies somehow pushes us to retreat. The king, women, and children have already been evacuated. A backstab and run to the crystal chamber brings us face to face with Kane, whose only wish is to fight Cecil in a duel. And since he's gonna beat you anyway, might as well choose the moral victory and simply defend or whatever. But his bloodlust is replaced with the shy ooh-ass replies to Rosa, who I guess didn't leave with the king and instead saved Cecil's life. Does he thank her? No. Golbez is revealed as another heavily armored man with no distinctive features, who demands Kane give up his tomfoolery and grab the crystal. As well as Rosa, kind of just cause, and the three of them leave. After a brief wallow in their collective failure, the group petition the king for a boat, which he provides since he now knows he can trust them. And I mean, he had to do something. Most of his force was just obliterated, so throwing his power behind the first band of adventurers he could trust is probably his best bet for his people's future. Also, have you guys noticed the lack of canoe yet? I just think it's kind of funny what we lose as the games progress. I guess there really isn't much need of river traversal in the future. But before we can reach our destination in our big safe boat, a giant fucking sea snake destroys it. Hi, Levy! Nice to see you again! Like it was nothing more than a toy. Cecil wakes up alone on foreign shores, needing to again gather a team to kill his former king. He shakes off the sand and heads to Mysidia. You guys remember Mysidia, right? It was the town that we war crimed not that long ago? No, not Mist, although I understand the confusion. No, Mysidia. The one we did off-screen, in the opening. So, no one is all too kind when one of their aggressors stumbles in one sunny afternoon. They will allow you to shop and purchase goods, as well as commenting on your true form. The elder and leader of Mysidia manages to look beyond Cecil's speckled past and acknowledge his newly found path, informing him a new leaf is not so easily turned over, so he has to go do a trial before he can save his friends from Golbez or drowning. He can do this by tackling mount ordeals with two new companions. Or, I guess, our babysitters. As in babies that sit in the back row. Twins, kids, and powerful magicians, Parom and Palom. Not only do their magic and hairstyles serve to make them distinctive, but Palom, the girl and white mage of the pair, is generally pretty sweet while also being a stickler for the rules, while her boastful brother Palom tends to be more of a show-offy brat, which as a 5-year-old... There are 5-year-olds helping to save the world? I think I might need to go reevaluate my life goals. Back on track, Cecil is determined to leave the ways of the Dark Blade behind him and to become a paladin, pure of heart. So, with two snot-nosed little kids in tow, grab a couple of levels to be safe and head to your biggest challenge yet. Getting two kids to walk up a mountain without complaining. Palom gets us through the first obstacle, a wall of fire. Then, they hit us with a meanwhile. I love me a meanwhile. And see, this is usually what I mean when I'm talking about utilizing medium-specific plot movers and shakers. You don't need a competent transition scene when you can just throw up a meanwhile in a video game. In fact, the less time between an expository scene, where my characters can't intervene on my behalf, and getting back to gameplay, the better. It is not very usable in other forms of media, as it can feel very antiquated and tacky. But personally, I love a meanwhile in a game about as much as I love an old-fashioned screen wipe in a Star Wars movie.
Meanwhile,
Our villain meets with Scarmiglione, the Master of Blight and one of the 4 elemental lords serving under Golbez. Kane, following in Cecil's footsteps of questioning authorities, suggests Golbez send him after his bro for no apparent reason. He is admonished, and the plot continues. Back on the mountain, we encounter undead. Can I for just one moment squeal about how much I love the interplay of earth magics and necromancy, utilizing the bodies of soldiers long since returned to the earth? I think it's super neat. I guess that's kind of the long and the short of it, but I really love coming across naturally occurring instances of blended magics. Anyway, we find the other end of the spectrum of adventure ages as Tellah, the 60-year-old, rejoins our party as we again run into him on his selfish search for vengeance, looking for the spell Meteor to aid in his killing of his new arch-nemesis Golbez. The two kiddos identify him through his knowledge as a sage and warn him that the spell's use might kill the old man, who straight up refuses to care, but does join the party for ease of getting to the top. A growl manages to shake the souls of our adventurers, only to be coming from our yellow-clad friend from a meanwhile ago, who pops up to try and murder a man on a mission, vengeful grandpa, and some babies. We beat him, but guess what? Not for long, as a trip across the bridge to our goal results in a back attack, the better to murk your mages with. Still manages to go pretty well, all things considered, so on to the real fight. Or rather, the real test of will, as the title of Paladin is obtained by taking the moral high ground in a fight against yourself. Some cryptic words from someone who couldn't possibly be Cecil's father sees you transform into a paladin to not fight your dark reflection. Fighting back will result in a fight you cannot win, as Dark Knight Cecil is currently stronger and will kick you in the nards. But defending for enough turns gets you an easy job upgrade. Returning to Mysidia shocks those who didn't believe anyone who kills people could be pure of heart. The more I've had time to mull over the implications of this character change, the more I enjoy it, although there are a few ideas that have wormed their way into my perception of this character that I've been having a hard time ironing out. But we'll get there. Also, the twins are revealed to 100% have been your babysitters the whole time. Granted, I'd really never considered them anything but, although I do think that says more about me than the plot generally. For now, let's take a look at the prophecy that the Elder reads on the new sword bestowed upon Cecil the White of Hair. One born of a dragon, bearing darkness and light, will rise to the heavens over the still land. The moon's light eternal brings a promise to earth with bounty and grace. We are talking about Rydia, right? Obviously, I kid, this little ditty was written for our main boy, Cecil. But it's vague enough where the addition of a singular letter could make it just as easily about Kane. Whatever. We've grown enough for the Elder to justify opening up the Devil's Road, which apparently hurts to travel, but gives us access to Baron in a single teleport. We walk around, mostly unaccosted, probably thanks in the most part to our brandy-dandy new look. Until, of course, we spot a familiar-looking monk making time to chill with the enemy, so of course we approach and yell Yong's name, and of course he doesn't recognize us, and sends these two dweebs to try and take us down. And when they fail, He steps up to fight us himself, having apparently been mind-controlled by the opposition and doesn't remember anything post the Leviathan attack. With his coconut knocked back into place and no love lost, they all reintroduce themselves and get a good night's rest before returning to their world-saving ways. Back in the castle where our recent disgrace took place, Bacon, the king's right-hand man, approaches, trying to convince us his loyalties lie with Baron, and joins our party, only for our baby aura readers to call him out for being the evil kind of stinky, and he transforms into a weird snake. Then, Cecil gets talked down to by his surrogate dad, only to reveal, dun dun dun, he's been dead this whole time, and the person in front of us is none other than the next elemental lord on Golbez's squad, Cognazo! Or the Drowned King, aka this little water bug guy. When, you may ask, did the king die or go missing? And Sid is immediately released upon the Lord's death. There are even more introductions for some reason. And with all the cuts they made to the script, apparently all 30 of our introductory scenes are 100% mandatory. Moving into the castle hall, Cognazo thrusts the last of his otherworldly powers into causing the walls to push inwards. The only way to hold them off is for the two children to turn themselves into stone? Okay, sure, I guess. I mean, we probably shouldn't have expected two 5-year-olds to be cool, calm, and collected under pressure. Mourn for exactly 2 seconds before getting slapped with a meanwhile, where Kane and Golbez discuss their plans to make Cecil get the last of the crystals and exchange it for Rosa, which would put him in the position to fight Golbez to the death. Meanwhile, the party is shown to their new ship, the Enterprise, by Sid. Kane stops their takeoff with a white flag and offers the trade. Earth crystal for human woman. And Cecil seems pretty hook, line, and sinker behind this exchange. I guess he does care. And so you set off for FusoYah, a picturesque town surrounded by trees and water, housing unique black chocobos, little frogs, and run entirely by women. What more could you ask for? And Edward's here! Oh, and he could play his little harp and give great advice. I think this honestly might be what heaven is like. The clerics reveal that a dark elf has stolen their earth crystal and has taken it to the cavern that impacts how effective metal armor and weapons are. This is very much a better safe than sorry mechanic, as the benefits of having better weapons are far outweighed by the potential negatives of the mechanic itself. The in-story reasoning for all of this is that the dark elf has a weakness to metal, which I think we all kind of do, and has done everything in his power to negate that. After more apparently mandatory introductions in the infirmary, Edward is honest with himself and us, and gives us whisperweed to help from afar, since he still needs time to recover. What whisperweed is exactly is up to interpretation, especially since it's also called the twin harp in some of the versions of this game. It's revealed that this is a big-brained move, as making it to the boss of the shittiest dungeon we've had to face so far leads to Edward projecting protective magic from his harp to our fantasy radio. I guess that makes him like Earth's first DJ. Well, instead of slinging discs, he's hucking harps. Oh. Probably shouldn't call him a harp jockey, though. The abbreviation's already been claimed. That breaks the elf's control over his shielding device. Returning to FusoYah sees Tellah forgive Edward for getting his daughter killed, on account of his ingenuity. Boarding your airship sees you face to face with good old Kane, who invites you to the Tower of Zot to complete the trade for your good friend, Rosa. But we walk into several other women of much more nefarious ends along the way, including the faithful servants of yet another elemental lord, the Magus sisters, Sandy, Cindy, and Mindy. These are a memorable set of enemies, the three working in tandem as part of a well-oiled machine, the way your team is apt to perform closer to the end of the game. They're well known for their Delta attack, or casting Reflect on one of the sisters and bouncing spells off of her. They also have a Rezer on their team, which can make them a tough fight for a first-time player. In previous Final Fantasies, we've seen our fair share of interesting and memorable bosses, but by the time we reach Final Fantasy IV, even the mini-bosses are confronting us with gorgeous design, as well as mechanics-driven combat. I think this is a key point in the evolution we see throughout Final Fantasy, where combat, writing, and world-building all truly start to form together. Handing our enemy the crystal results in a double cross. Honestly, I think this is kind of just a regular cross. I really don't think we should have trusted him in the first place. and Tellah runs forth to give Golbez a beating he won't soon forget. Using Meteor instantly kills our spry old boy while merely forcing Golbez to retreat to fight another day. It also manages to break Golbez's hold over Kane, and we finally get Rosa back. Rosa and Cecil embrace, and Cecil, still emotionally constipated, cannot admit his feelings to his childhood bestie. Only for Barbecia to show herself in all the glory befit the Lord of Wind, who is quickly bested. She threatens the party with the complete destruction of the tower that holds them, but Rosa gets them out using a teleport. Right when all hope seems lost, considering they did sort of hand off the final of the primary 4 crystals to the wrong side, Kane has a reveal! There's another 4! The dark set to our light, the alt to your pop, the contrivance to the plot that will open a path to the moon. He also gives us a magma rock, which somehow opens up the Underworld. So to the Underworld we go, merrily and with very little follow-up. Why the moon? Well, that's where Golbez wants to go. Why? Kane doesn't know. You think he had any time between planning on how to menace his crush's boyfriend to ask any important questions? Stop at a Gart to get a bit of a lore dump and top up on goods. You'll find something we've suspiciously been missing up until this point. A well! Now, you didn't think this plot beat wouldn't get my blood pumping, did you? Not only do you get a well, but when you throw a rock in it, it blows up a mountain range to give our party access to the world beneath our feet. Good work, well. Arriving on Cid's ship reveals a world in the midst of war as the Red Wings, who I guess got here, I'm assuming by creating the Tower of Babel, which seems to have its roots all the way down here, shoot down an entire platoon of tanks. Tanks belonging to none other than our favorite subterranean race, the dwarves. Going to one of the very few locations currently available to us, as our ship unbelievably crashes and we're all stuck at the bottom of the world, takes you to the dwarven castle. Side note, I do feel like I am far more concerned with the crashing of flying vehicles than any of our protagonists ever seem to be. Granted, I'm sure that's not substantiated by any trends in aviation. Anyway, after Cid fades out into the night to fix our ship, we meet King Geote and his daughter Luca, who reveals that Golbez has already succeeded in obtaining 2 of the 4 dark crystals. I guess we spent a little too much time talking to town folks, and should have just thrown that rock into the first deep pit we could find. While Geote is positive the crystal under his direct protection is safe, Yang senses danger in the crystal room, revealing Luca's lost doll, Calcabrina, and beginning a super cursed encounter. I mean, look at those cold, dead eyes. I've never really understood baby dolls. Looking up at you, possibly unblinking, certainly unflinching at the cold, dark realities of the world around you. Why yes, I did collect baby dolls from the ages of 10 to 15. We crave to understand that which we fear. So let's stab this one in the head and be off. Now I am 100% the person to nitpick, so real quick, how are the dwarves alive? Luca's doll has a very human physique, which makes you think they're either familiar with the outside world, or they themselves share human physiology. But if they have a human physiology, they would probably need an incredibly vitamin and mineral-rich diet to make up for the lack of vegetation and sunlight, and also have some kind of internal way of dealing with really intense heat in their cavernous lava-filled existence. All that being said, the town of Agart does trace their lineage down dwarven roots, so that points to a much more human-like existence. Granted, they're not really helpful or give us any more additional information on this topic. I don't know, man. I've never brought it up before, but then again, they've never been completely closed off from the outside world before now. You guys got any thoughts? Following their defeat, we find ourselves locked in the crystal room, which triggers yet another encounter with Golbez that surely you'll lose until— what? The mist dragon appears and saves Cecil's skin, revealing Rydia's safe and all-grown-up reintroduction into the plot. Is the mist dragon her coalesced spirit? Or was it like a genetically inherited trait? Or perhaps her mother was one of many, and we now just have a completely separate person pouring their life force into our efforts. Unsure. What I do know is that after Levi ate Rydia, he somehow dispelled her in the Feymarsh, or the canonical place where all beasts and summons live. This brings up a lot of follow-up questions like, how? And why? And are summoners just sort of yoinking something out of space and time and compelling them to do an attack? Or do they all have to sign up for it, Pokemon Adventure style? At this point, there isn't much for the player to dig into just yet without a ship, so head on to the main event. The first half of the Tower of Babel awaits you. There you'll meet a doctor. What's his whole deal? I don't really know. But he's evil, and in cahoots with the local Ruby Tuesdays. Rydia, still kind of a clumsy little kid, summons his attention rather than a cute creature. Bash this mortal man's tiny bones before his minion finishes the job for us before self-destructing in our general direction, starting the real third course of this meal. The second fight with the newly deformed Dr. Luge. Beat his freaking buns and walk off to find some cannons that Yang insists he can stop with the force of his body? Saying goodbye to yet another of our party, we venture forth, to yet again come across your greatest nemesis that you can't seem to defeat. He attempts to blow up the very ground beneath the party's feet, but guess who was just taking the newly repaired Enterprise out for a test run? Sid's back, baby, and in the nick of time to kill himself for the sake of the party, allowing them to escape on their ship while he single-handedly bombs the exit closed behind you. Go back to Fabul and inform Mrs. Yang that her husband has perished. I mean, you don't have to, but it is one of her 4 unique dialogue lines, so it'd be a shame to miss it. Heading back to Baron, we'll see a hook added to the ship, so it can now carry the hovercraft. Which is helpful, I guess. Just really didn't want to give us a canoe in this one, huh? Following the hint that you may need to use the hovercraft, find your way to the dilapidated and seemingly abandoned Eblin Castle. Another use of the all-powerful hovercraft gets us to the Eblin Caves, where we meet the people who left Eblin that way. Or, I guess, those that ran to avoid the unstoppable carnage. The near-death guards hanging around give you the impression that their unstoppable kamikaze of a prince is up ahead avenging his homelands. It is here we meet Edge, or Edward Geraldine. Probably one of my least favorite playable characters, and no, before you ask, this is not the last PC we'll meet. But here he is, going face to face with the sergeant of the Sassy Leg Battalion himself, Rubicante. Rubicante pretends not to know of the kingdom he just destroyed or the boy's parentage, who he took hostage. Also, I say boy not due to age. He is going to be one of the oldest members of the party once he decides to join up, but he gives the air of a 15-year-old mall goth, and I simply cannot separate that from his actual personality. All this build-up and back and forth for this little dweeb to get obliterated by a fireball. We pick him up, and he is kind of the worst from the jump, but also a ninja searching for justice for his people, so we let him tag along. Overall, he's generally quite rude and very presumptuous around Rydia, which, as a 26-year-old man, is kind of creepy and very off-putting. But don't worry, we'll speak more to that later. Immediately move on to the next dungeon, the second tasting of the Tower of Babel. Here, our big bad gives me some pause in my immediate judgment of Edge, but honestly not for long. Not only did Rubicante destroy his home in order to, I'm assuming here, plant the tower in this general vicinity, he also took the king and queen hostage, allowing Dr. Luge to do experiments on them to turn them into monsters of war. They are set loose on the squad and experience enough brief lucidity to tell their son he has to end their lives, and that they are sorry. It is a pretty easy fight, so Dr. Luge is batting 0 for 4. No wonder Ruby isn't in charge. Simply can't find any competent help. Fight this man's leg jutsu and plummet back down into the Underworld area of the map. The next area is one of the more open sections with a few missable moments, but mostly it's set up as an exploration and purchasing zone to prepare you for the final act of the game. Turns out Cid isn't dead! Hooray! Not the first of our number to come back post a death scare. Honestly, unlike in 2, character deaths are kind of losing any semblance of meaning. Will the others return? I mean, Yang's already done it once. Rosa's been on the brink a couple of times. It's only been a couple of scenes since we found out Rydia was alive, safe and sound. So I guess only time will tell? Anyway, while recovering under the care of the dwarves, he tells you he can upgrade a commandeered ship to be flyable over lava, and finally opens up this part of the world for travel. while here also inform Geode about your recent escapades, so he'll give you the key, his daughter's necklace, aka the most dangerous place to hide this key when there's a war on, to be able to enter the sealed caves that house the last of the dark crystals we have access to. My order of events here was to chill with the dwarves of Torma, clean up my bestiary, then went on to explore Rydia's home away from destroyed home, the Feymarsh, or the Land of Summons. We'll talk more about some of the pros and cons of a wishy-washy magic system like this one in upcoming parts, and why this world causes me to ask so many questions about the Blue Planet's political history. Triumph over Ashira and Leviathan, the leaders of the realm, in order to obtain their help in the battles to come. It's cute. I like the relationship they both have with Rydia. Best girl gets best set and best story beats. As it should be. Following a couple of hairy fights and mysterious questions, head to the sealed cave to fight just a bunch of doors, which is a super fun reoccurring enemy type. I love the idea that the trap is the doors or the walls, and how pervasive it is throughout this game. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the themes of the game, or the idea that evil could be hiding directly in front of you, right under your nose, and you'd never notice it. Or does it? Turns out Kane is still susceptible to mind control, like really susceptible, seeing as the second they have their hands on the crystal, he turns tail to return to his old boss, opening up the pathway to the moon. But we can worry about that later. Back to exploring this map. Finding yourself in a cavern of poisonous flooring and annoying enemies reveals that Yang isn't dead either. Aren't we so glad we already broke the news to his not quite widow? He is comatose though, and under the care of Fae, who simply want to keep him for themselves. Going back to the wife in question to tell her of his whereabouts results in her gifting the party her frying pan, hoping a different kind of concussion will bring Yang back to her. And to be fair, it wouldn't be the first time a firm bonk to the dome brought him back to us. Returning to Geode again, who alongside the Elder of Mysidia will be commemorated in the story halls of holders of cryptic ancient rumors, will point you directly back there, to Mysidia, to find out if the myth of the lunar whale, a ship that can travel through space, is real or not. Sid gives the Falcon this cool drill so we can pop back out into the outer world. The power of prayer reveals the spaceship, and we can head onwards and actually upwards this time to our final discoverable location, the motherfucking moon! So, fans of the game may have noticed that I have neglected to mention the humming ways, or more specifically, naming way, as we've journeyed through this plot summary. Naming way, or exploring way, or journaling way, whatever his name turns out to be at the end of the 3DS version of the game, is a much more iconic and prolific character than the version of Naming Way we see in the Pixel Remaster. In this variant, and I'm assuming the original, Naming Way isn't a character as much as an annoyance, constantly asking if you'd like to change your name. And why the hell do they not look like cute-ass bunnies, and instead like nervous middle-aged men? Love the moon bunnies. They're cute. I mean, I find it absolutely adorable that there are canonically bunnies that live on the moon within this universe. But outside of Naming Way, in the 3DS version alone, the humming ways feel more like a throwaway joke than any meaningful kind of world building, as they don't participate in the plot. Obviously, to me, this seems like most of their original material may have ended up in the bin. So then, what are my problems? What are my expectations? Well, the one you do run into in the DS version has some of the most convoluted lead-ins to side quests that we've seen so far. The 3D version is almost notorious for needing more than one well-thought-out playthrough in order to 100%, with a lot of things required for completion left purposefully obtuse. So Naming Way, until you find out his true purpose, seems to be a similar series of contrived cutscenes. Besides that, I'm not the only one that thinks these things don't look like bunnies. In fact, looking up Naming Way will get you 101 pictures, very, very few of which even reference their original or 2D appearance. And hey, if you couldn't make them look like the walking, talking man bunnies that you'd envisioned due to the technology at the time, you could have just made them bunnies. Most of them don't speak a language we understand anyway. I mean, other games were doing anthropomorphics at the time, so it was an achievable goal. What happened? After dealing with the Bunmen and rocking through the moon maze for a bit, pull up to meet the mysterious FusoYah, aka Cecil's uncle and the keeper of a sleeping race of human-like aliens, who are awaiting the technological advancements of the people of Earth to meet their standards before waking back up and demanding citizenship. I'm sure that'll go super smoothly.
We finally have the plot laid out for us by this living beard. He tells us the story of our enemy, a man named Zemis, who wishes to kill the inhabitants of the planet and claim it for his people. While FusoYah forced him to sleep, his evil spirit was just a little too intent on his plans, managing to corrupt some of Earth's inhabitants with his heinous ideas. The crystals are also the Lunarian energy source. I have questions, but they can wait. That he plans to collect and use to activate the as-yet unannounced Giant of Babel to activate a dimensional elevator to free it, maybe also himself, and to destroy the planet with his new robot buddy. Cecil goes, plot hole, and asks for an explanation as to how a spaceship came to be on his home turf, to which FusoYah, very, very delicately, breaks to him that it was built by his brother and Cecil's late father, FusoYah,
Who also made the Devil's Road. You know, the one it hurts to travel?
Who was his mother? Unclear. Why does Golbez, who would have been 10 at the time of Cecil's birth, not remember having a younger brother? Man, I don't know. I'm telling you all of the information I have. Asking follow-up questions helps neither of us. By the end of this video, you and I are gonna know about the same amount of Final Fantasy IV canon. Anyway, Cecil's daddy happened to give us the power to beat Zemis at the top of Mount Ordeals. So I guess it's a good thing that Cecil didn't have a delayed change of heart. FusoYah tells us to head back to Earth and deal with this brand new babbling bully. Returning to Earth, we find we are already too late. The giant has been awakened. The destruction is wanton. But worry not. Our friends come to the rescue. The dwarves, pixies, and Yang lay down suppressing fire in their tanks. Cid and the reclaimed Red Wings rain hell from on high. Accompanying them are the Mysidian mages, including the Elder, who couldn't leave the town until this moment for some reason, as well as the suddenly much less stoned toddlers. He saved them, even though Tellah said they couldn't be saved externally.
Didn't even want a MacGuffin that one, huh? Just kind of wished it away.
Of course, our merry band is tasked with entering the beast to absolutely destroy its internals. Oh, and don't worry, we don't get through this bit of cutscenery without at least one more introduction.
What did you think this was? A game inhabited by uncourteous brutes?
Anyway, on to the death and destruction. Find out Zemis has restored new life onto the four lords, who all rush to attack one after the next. Oh, but that isn't all that this guy's insides hide. They were, of course, guarding the path to the giant's heart, though brain would have been a better name for it, as we face off against the most annoying CPU I've ever had to deal with. Thinking we've won, we are once again brought face to face with Golbez. Or should we call him Big Bro from now on? I guess so, because after a stern talking down from Uncle Yah, and a screen wobble that knocks our Unk to the ground, Golbez remembers himself. Zemis, ever the Lunarian supremacist, chose Golbez to be his puppet due to his half-Lunarian status, which also somehow made him easier to control. And maybe he's right about him being spiritually the more evil of the two, as in the same turn we saw the only permanently dead member of our party take, Golbez storms off to settle the score with Zemis, taking FusoYah with him.
Thank God. Otherwise we'd have to introduce him to 3 more people.
The rest of the gang convince Cecil to fight alongside, or rather slightly behind, his newly inherited family. Oh, and Kane's back. Say hello to your endgame party. I hope you like them, cause they're what you got. And don't worry, while Cecil tries yet again to get the girls to stay behind, thinking, I guess, that Edge's weak-ass ninjutsu and his own level 1 white spells would do the job, they show up anyhow. I guess the ladies rode the wheel well to the moon, reappearing once the boys touch down. This is where I did a little pre-endgame cleanup before heading to the Lunarian Tower for the final grind, dungeon, and boss barrage. This dungeon stinks. I mean, it has the same increase in difficulty level that most of the final dungeons we've seen up to this point have, but that doesn't mean I have to love that Dark Bahamut mechanic or the maze to get to and from the save points. But hey, they're save points. Watch your new family try to strike Zemis from this moon, only to unearth his unfettered form. This is Zeromus, which is scarier. As in, there will be 0 people left on Earth, or something.
It's his hatred given form, and that form is
a scoop of spaghetti, or maybe it's a tangle of hair that you found in the bathtub drain, or like just a bunch of wires. Fire, but thick. Unsure.
Golbez and FusoYah make another attempt to kill him, but since they are not cleansed of their past like Cecil, they stand no chance. Somehow knowing the party is in trouble, the Mysidian Elder sends them hopes and prayers. And you know what? It works! Cecil receives a crystal from Golbez, and the baby mages res your party, being helped by the rest of the team's kind words. Beat Zeramus to dust, go have a snack, and be on your merry little way. Golbez says he'll be staying on the moon, and FusoYah menacingly says evil will never go out of fashion. Start that mandatory end screen scroll that lets us know that the moon people will be leaving, taking the planet's second moon with them, which I'm sure will have no negative effects on the environment, and the brothers won't be reunited again. This, of course, is before they show us our happy endings. The twins pick up their training, all those of royal blood take up their thrones, including the lovesick Edge, who simply can't stop thinking about that kid. Edward starts to rebuild Damcian with the help of the Trojans. Cecil and Rosa get married. Don't worry, all the important friends attend, and take on the crown of Baron. Sits there to look after them too. The dwarves demilitarize their society to rebuild, and Yang somehow also inherits the throne. They didn't really get into that one, only that he still leads the monk and the king abdicated the throne to allow for his rule. Rydia returns to the Feymarsh to live amongst the beasts and summons, and Kane, well, Kane still has some growing to do as we find him monologuing on Mount Ordeals. And that's it. No great message to leave us on, just the story's resolution. Which, surprise, brings us to the end of the video. If you'd like to see where Final Fantasy IV ends up on our rankings, or hear me talk ad nauseum about the plot structure, the character arcs, all of the holes within the telling of the story, or the what, when, how, and why I may have liked the 3D version better, well, that video will be uploaded soon, so stick around. We have so much more to talk about, and that isn't even covering the after years, which, yes, we are already going to be covering a spin-off story, so get ready for that. And without a message to leave you all on, bred on online content with a need to please the algorithm, this creator will be back with more lukewarm takes. If you'd like to follow her elsewhere, you can find her streaming at twitch.tv/unlucky_clover, or harass her in her Discord server. If you'd like to aid her on her journey, you can always like, comment, subscribe, and if you are able, maybe donate to her coffee. All that is linked in the description, where most will never find it. Thank you guys so much for sticking around until the end of the video. Please let me know your opinions on the plot of 4 in the comments below, or if there's anything you'd like me to cover in our next video, which will be the deconstruction and analysis part of this little video series within a video series. As always, the likes, comments, views, continued little acts of support mean the absolute world to me, and I am so looking forward to where this silly little project can go. Thank you guys all so much, and I'll see you in the next one.